Hey there, and welcome back to the wrap-up session for Chapter 10. We're running a little long Tuesday night, and I could tell that your energy level was down, and we had to get through that in-class activity, so thank you for staying with me. I appreciate it. I realize after the fact that I was well rested, whereas you were not, so I take pity on you and give you this video to help get you through the rest of Chapter 10 so that we can have our last lecture Tuesday night. So remember, the theme, kind of overall theme of the evening was the handoff from dev to ops. Dev to ops, the flaming bag of poo that goes from development to operations. What happens in between is the actual implementation, the rollout, and this has everything to do with how you do project management, how you do your SDLC or System Development Lifecycle Management. And we talked about the different flavors last time. This time we just need to dig into some of the finer points of this handoff process. And where we left off was right here with the four basic approaches. I want to make sure you're very comfortable with the distinctions between all four of these. So number one and number four are pretty easy to understand because they're at one extreme or the other. Phased and pilot, sometimes students get confused. Phased is when you're rolling out particular modules or pieces of software. So the best example is the SAP financial module, then the SAP HR module, then the SAP CRM module, whereas a pilot implementation would be the whole thing out to a single location, then more locations and more locations, and a ripple effect. So please bear those in mind, those distinctions in mind. Change control is not just an important topic for SDLC, and it's not just an important topic for change control, but more importantly than that, it's important for your overall technology governance of the entire organization. How you manage change control says a lot about you. It says a lot about your organizational culture and the level of formality, the level of rationalization, the process focus, whatever you want to call it, that your company puts into things, even down to the level of documentation that you have. If you feel like every day you come to work and it's just chaos and nobody knows what's going on, that's because you have poor change control. Good change control means there are tons of changes happening all the time, but you know they're coming. They're all documented. You're comfortable with what's going on at work. That said, I would caution you that just coming out of college, if you ever see a job posting for anything that says with the word change management in it, a change management manager, anything like that, that's referring to ITIL's version of change management, which is pretty in-depth. It's a thankless job. I can't recommend it. I think you should run away from a job like that, at least for an entry-level position. Change management and configuration management, run from those. You just want, something a little more entry-level. So the only advice I would give you with regards to the right way to do change control is please do a better job than my generation did in terms of communicating what's going on. The number one complaint faculty have of ITS is not that they don't know what they're doing, not that they don't provide us the tools that we need to do our job. They do all that. The number one problem we have is the level of communication we get from ITS when they're rolling out changes, when they're implementing either new software, new hardware, getting a new PC on my desk, getting a new version of Blackboard, taking CougarNet down, anytime there's a change. And I can't just blame ITS at SIUE. This is endemic to every organization I've ever worked. It is almost impossible to over-communicate. So if you want to be successful in the workplace, get close to your customers and let them know exactly what's going on. They will love you. I'm telling you, that's the formula for success. Another formula for success, this is not in the book. In fact, I haven't seen this in any books. I hope that you talk about this in 270, the difference between dev, test, and prod. This is an important aspect of implementation, whether we're talking about security implementation, implementing any new system. Your developers develop in the dev environment. Your testers, who are not your developers make terrible testers. Your testers test off the dev environment, which is a separate database, separate server, maybe even a separate network, separate. Once your end users buy off that they accept that, they accept the changes, the change works as promised, then and only then, after you've communicated that you're going to do this, you can move it from the test environment to the prod environment. Prod, short for production, the production environment, the live system. Only when you go through this formal process of dev to test to prod, that's your litmus test for whether you have good change control within your organization. This is the lowest common denominator. If your company does not have a dev, test, and prod environment, you're not doing it the right way. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, and I think I can back that up. I've had to take a lot of directors and CIOs to task on this idea that you have to, develop and test in separate environments, and they have to be completely independent of production. If you want to make any IT person, whether they're development or operations person, anybody in IT, scream, just talk about testing in prod. Oh my God, you never test in prod. Never, never, never. I'll come after you. I will slap you. I will track you down. When we talk about culture, we have to talk about the reputation, the stereotype of IT. The stereotype of IT is that we're not very receptive to customer feedback. We're not very attentive. We don't have good social skills. We're great at technology, but short on business skills. That's why people are scared every time we roll out a change. Oh my God, what's gonna happen now? And that kind of stress makes people resist any change that IT wants to do, even if it's a good one, even if it's one that completely, totally makes sense. Even subconsciously, they'll fight you. They'll fight you on this. There is a way to change the culture. Sadly, culture does not change overnight. Culture changes very slowly, but I do have a recipe to share with you for how to change culture. And that is this. You have to build on small successes. You roll out a small project, you make a small security change, educate the end users, keep them in the loop the entire way, and then remind them of how successful the rollout was. This implementation was great. Hey, did you have any downtime? No? Fantastic. Job well done. We did great, didn't we? You have to sell it. And that kind of self-promotion, that kind of marketing is not something that IT folks are good at. You need to get good at it, about selling the victories, so that when you have to roll out something bigger, people are less afraid. We're getting into soft skills here. I know it's hard to measure this stuff. I'm just telling you what works. I do appreciate the fact that the advice I'm giving you is a little vague, hard to measure. However, we can get more specific, especially with regard to a good security implementation. What does a good security implementation look like? Well, I'll tell you, if you follow all the guidelines in your security framework, you're going to have a successful implementation. Using a framework, think of it as a checklist. I'm not going to say you're not going to forget anything. You're much less likely to forget something, right? If you're using a checklist, did that, notified all the stakeholders what was going on, did this, tested that, got buy-off, everybody signed off on everything. You don't have to use every framework. That'd be ridiculous. You have to pick one. Your organization has to pick one. They will let you know what they like to use. We keep coming back to NIST based on the textbook, and because we live in the U.S. and NIST is definitely the default standard around here. The security SDLC framework is a good kind of specific, simple way to implement security within the SDLC process that you're already familiar with. The SANS Top 20 list is a even more practical checklist. There's a lot of helpful stuff in the SANS Top 20 list. The cybersecurity framework is the 2014 framework that you have on Blackboard. So these are things that you want to keep in your toolkit, keep in your arsenal. When you go to work, you should print them off and get comfortable with them if you're going to work in security. Remember, I also put a document on Blackboard it's a SANS document on advice on how to incorporate security best practices for project managers specifically. And the quote I love from this document is, that's a PDF that's on Blackboard: by including security considerations in every phase of a project, every phase, PMs have the opportunity to deliver more secure systems in a more secure manner. Now think about the opposite of that. What would be the opposite of baking it into every single phase? Well, you do it all at the end, or worse, never at all. That's a recipe for disaster. This is the recipe for success. But here's what's going to happen. You are going to start reading through these documents and say, good God, I don't know how to do all this stuff. Especially if you're not a security professional, if you don't have a lot of experience in security, you're going to feel overwhelmed. If you're starting off as a business analyst or a junior project manager, and you're trying to figure out how this stuff works, it's fine to work with your InfoSec department at your company and just have them explain steps to you, because they'll have their own checklist based on one of the frameworks for you to use. But the only way this works is if you buddy up with people in your InfoSec department where you work. They're really good people to know, whether you're working in information security or not. So what's this last list? This is a list of things I wish that every project manager that I'd ever dealt with had asked him or herself as they were building out their project plan. And I thought they were being a dumbass for not building in from the start. And I had to remind them about it. I was like, oh, you forgot to do this. Oh, you forgot to do that. Learn from their mistakes, right? These are the things that you should think about going into any project, any implementation, any rollout. What are the threats? What's the availability requirement in terms of uptime? Confidentiality of the information, integrity, disaster recovery requirements nobody ever thinks about, and you'll be a hero if you include this. What kind of monitoring needs to be done after the fact, after it's implemented? What training and education is needed, not just for end users, but for your system administrators and your operations folks as well? Who needs to access it? And oh my God, how you're going to authenticate. And please work for a company that has a security policy that says everybody has to, every piece of software has to be compliant with either Active Directory, LDAP. If you try to use a software application that uses its own authentication scheme, it's terrible. That's a backwards way to do it. So I'll end this video with an advertisement for Dr. Moore's project management elective this summer. If you're into project management, you go, security is interesting, but it's not exactly what I want to specialize in or focus on, or I'd like to learn more about project management, even if you don't want to be a project manager full time. It's great experience, and it looks great on a resume to have any kind of project management familiarity. So think about this class, and of course also think about my IT audit and control class in the fall. If you'd like to learn more about either class, please come talk to me anytime you want. So until we meet again, aloha!